I think I didn't do anything wrong, just let myself have a little fun. We were supposed to be celebrating, but it felt like he wasn't even there. Now he's filed for annulment, his family knows everything, and the man I married won't even say my name. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I thought honeymoons were supposed to feel magical. Ours felt like a layover. The resort was beautiful. White sand, turquoise water, all those postcard cliches. But Nathan spent the first 2 days glued to his laptop. He said he needed to finish a few reports before he could really relax. I smiled and said it was fine, but inside, I was already restless. I'd planned the whole trip myself, the beachfront suite, the candlelight dinners, the couple's massages. I wanted pictures, memories, stories to tell. Instead, I got silence, spreadsheets, and early bedtimes. By the third night, I started drinking alone at the pool bar. That's where I met Miguel. He worked there, tan skin, white shirt unbuttoned just enough to show the top of his chest, the kind of man who knew exactly how to make a woman feel seen. He called me Miss Vale, and I didn't bother correcting him to Mrs. It sounded better that way. He asked if I was celebrating something, and I laughed and said, supposedly. He grinned and said, then let me help you remember why. It was harmless at first, just flirting, just a drink. I told myself it was Nathan's fault for leaving me alone again. When I went back to the room later, he was asleep with his laptop still open beside him. I watched him for a long minute, thinking how lucky he was that someone like me still wanted him. Then I climbed into bed and told myself nothing was wrong. The next afternoon, I ran into Miguel again by the pool. He handed me a cocktail I hadn't ordered and said it was on the house. I should have said no, but I didn't. We talked about everything, the island, travel, life before marriage. He asked what it felt like to be a wife. I told him it felt like disappearing. He laughed softly and said, then maybe you should find yourself again. I told him that was easy for him to say. He winked and said, I can help. It was a joke, but it didn't feel like one. The conversation stuck with me all day. That evening, when Nathan said he was tired and wanted to stay in, I told him I might go for a walk on the beach. He barely looked up from his screen, just said, don't stay out too late. So I went back to the bar. Miguel was there, wiping down glasses, smiling like he'd been waiting for me. We talked, we laughed, and when he said I looked too beautiful to be alone, I didn't correct him. I told myself it was just attention, nothing more. But deep down, I think I already knew I wasn't coming back from that walk the same person who left. The night air was soft and heavy with salt, and every sound, the water, the music, my own heartbeat, felt too close. Miguel said he wanted to show me the best view of the ocean, somewhere the guest never went. I followed him down a narrow path lit by small lanterns, my sandals sinking into the sand. I knew I should have gone back to my room, but I told myself it was innocent, that Nathan wouldn't even notice I was gone. He hadn't noticed much of anything lately. We stopped by a row of palm trees, where the beach curved away from the lights of the resort. The water glowed faintly blue under the moon. Miguel asked if I was happy. I said, I guess so, though it sounded unconvincing even to me. He smiled and said, you don't look like someone who's happy. I told him that marriage changes everything, that Nathan used to be exciting, but now acted like a coworker instead of a husband. He laughed softly and said, then maybe you just need a reminder of how it feels to be wanted. It wasn't planned. It wasn't romantic. It was fast and reckless and wrong. And even while it was happening, I was already telling myself it didn't count. It was just a moment, a stupid, impulsive thing that didn't mean anything. But when it was over, I couldn't look at him. He tried to talk, to make it casual, but I just said I needed to go. I walked back barefoot, carrying my shoes, the sound of the waves chasing me like an accusation. Nathan was still awake when I slipped into the room. The light from his laptop cast a cold glow across the bed. He looked up and asked, "Where were you?" I said, "Just walking. You were busy." He nodded once, slow, like he didn't quite believe me. Then he closed his laptop and turned off the light without another word. I barely slept. Every creak in the walls made me think of Miguel's voice. Every time Nathan shifted beside me, guilt stabbed through my chest. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was over, that no one had seen us, that it could stay buried forever. I got dressed early, went down for breakfast before Nathan woke up, and pretended to scroll through my phone like everything was fine. When he came down later, he looked rested, calm. He kissed my cheek and said we should plan an excursion for the day. I smiled too brightly, agreeing to whatever he suggested. But as I reached for my coffee, he set something down on the table, a thin woven bracelet with the resort's logo on it. I froze. He asked, "Did you lose this last night?" His tone was even, but his eyes weren't. I forced a laugh, said, "Maybe it fell out of my bag." He didn't say another word. He just nodded, folded the bracelet, and put it in his pocket, like he was keeping evidence. The rest of the trip felt like walking on glass. Nathan stopped asking where I was going or what I was doing. He wasn't cold exactly, just quiet, polite, distant in a way that made my stomach twist. He'd hold doors open, pull out chairs, act like the perfect husband, but his eyes never stayed on me for long. I tried to match his calm, but I was unraveling inside. Miguel avoided me completely. Whenever I passed the bar, he found a reason to turn away, to talk to someone else, to walk into the back room. That should have been a relief, but it only made me more paranoid. What if he told someone? What if someone saw us? Every smile from a staff member felt like mockery. Every time Nathan checked his phone, I imagined him scrolling through messages that would expose me. I started overcompensating. I planned fancy dinners, booked couples massages, took endless selfies of us together, like proof that we were happy. Nathan didn't refuse, but he didn't play along either. He'd smile for the pictures, then turn away the moment they were done. One night, while he was in the shower, I looked through his phone. There was nothing. No messages to friends, no calls to family. Just a single email draft addressed to himself titled "Resort Expenses." The next morning, I found out what that meant. We were checking out in 2 days, and Nathan stopped by the front desk saying he wanted copies of all the receipts for reimbursement purposes. I tried to laugh it off, saying he was too organized for vacation. He just smiled faintly and said, "It's good to have everything documented." That night, I met Elena on a video call. She asked how the honeymoon was going. I told her it was fine, then tried to steer the conversation away. She frowned and said, "You're lying. What happened?" I said nothing, but she didn't let it go. Finally, she sighed and said, "Serena, someone tagged you in a photo on social media. It's from the resort bar. You're dancing with one of the staff. Kind of close." My throat went dry. I told her it was nothing, just a fun night, but she didn't sound convinced. She said, "You're married now. You can't keep playing like you're not." I hung up before she could say more. When I returned to the room, Nathan was packing. I asked what he was doing. He said we were leaving early, that a storm was coming and flights might get cancelled. I tried to argue, but he said calmly, "I already changed the tickets." On the desk beside him was a white envelope from the resort office, his name printed neatly on the front. He slipped it into his bag without a word. I told myself it was just the bill. But later, when he stepped out for ice, I opened the bag. Inside the envelope wasn't a bill. It was a printed report stamped with the resort's logo. The heading read, "Incident Statement, Guest Misconduct." The flight home was the longest silence of my life. Nathan didn't speak once, not even when the flight attendants offered drinks or when I tried to joke about the turbulence. He just stared out the window, one hand resting on the folder that held the resort report. I wanted to snatch it from him, rip it up, pretend it never existed. But I didn't dare. Every time I opened my mouth, the words stuck to my tongue. When we landed, his mother, Marilyn, was waiting at the arrival's gate. She hugged Nathan tightly but didn't even look at me. I tried to smile to greet her, but she turned and said to him, "Your lawyer called." My heart dropped. "Lawyer?" Nathan only nodded, then walked ahead without a word. I followed them to the car, feeling like a shadow no one wanted. The drive home was worse. Marilyn sat in the passenger seat, speaking softly to Nathan about next steps and getting it resolved quietly. She never said my name. When we reached our house, Nathan got out first, opened my door and said, "Go inside." His tone wasn't angry. It was final. I obeyed, numb, like someone following orders in a dream. Inside, everything looked exactly as we'd left it. Half-packed suitcases, unopened wedding gifts, the leftover flowers from our reception already wilting in their vases. I stood there, trying to believe this was still my home. Nathan came in a few minutes later, carrying his laptop and the folder. He placed both on the table and said, "I'll be staying with my mother until things are finalized." I asked what he meant. He didn't answer. He picked up his phone and made a short call. I couldn't hear the other voice, only his reply. "Yes, file it for annulment." The word hit me like a slap. I said, "You're not serious." He looked at me then, calm, empty, and said, "You made the choice for both of us." That night I went through his things, desperate for proof he was bluffing. In his desk drawer, I found the resort report. My hands shook as I read it. Statements from staff confirming they'd seen me with Miguel near the beach, security footage timestamps, a witness note from the bartender supervisor. It ended with one line. "Incident corroborated. Guest spouse notified upon request." I sat on the floor, staring at those words until they blurred. When I finally looked up, I caught my reflection in the dark window, my wedding ring still on, my face pale and tired. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. I wanted to call him, but he was gone. The next morning, Marilyn called. She didn't say hello. She just said, "Fiona Reed will contact you soon. Cooperate if you have any sense left." Then she hung up. When I stepped outside for air, the sun was too bright. The neighbors smiled politely, not knowing, but I could already feel it, whispers waiting to start. The meeting with Fiona Reed was worse than any nightmare I could have imagined. Her office was spotless, everything lined up in perfect order, just like Nathan. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. She said Nathan had chosen to pursue an annulment rather than a divorce, since the marriage had been entered under fraudulent circumstances. I asked what that meant. She said, without blinking, "You misrepresented yourself as a faithful partner while engaging in adultery during the honeymoon period. That qualifies as fraud." I laughed, too loudly. I said it was ridiculous, that it was just one night, a mistake, nothing more. She didn't even look up from the folder. "Mrs. Vale," she said, "the resort's report, hotel key logs, and employee testimonies confirm otherwise. You signed forms authorizing bar charges to your suite at 11:43 p.m., and a staff keycard entered your room at 12:02 a.m. Her tone was neutral, detached, like she was reading a weather report. I tried to say Miguel had misunderstood, that he followed me, that it wasn't what it looked like. Fiona closed the folder gently and said, "The staff member has already provided a written statement confirming consent on your part." My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. When I asked if I could speak to Nathan directly, she shook her head. "He has no interest in further discussion. He only wants this resolved." Then she slid a pen toward me with the documents already marked. I told her he couldn't just erase me, that people don't annul love. She replied, "He's not erasing love. He's erasing a contract built on lies." By the time I left the office, my legs were shaking so badly I could barely walk. Outside, Marilyn was waiting by her car, watching me with that cold satisfaction people get when they think justice has been served. She didn't speak until I passed her. You should have known better, she said softly. I wanted to tell her I did know better. I just didn't care until it was too late. When I got home, the ring on my finger felt like a joke. Nathan had told Fiona I could keep it. She said, he considers it worthless now. I slipped it off and left it on the table. For the first time, I believed him. The courthouse was smaller than I imagined, quiet except for the low shuffle of papers and the hum of the ceiling fan. I sat alone on the left side, the seat beside me empty. Nathan wasn't there. Only his lawyer, Fiona Reed, who nodded politely when the clerk called our case. She didn't look angry, just efficient, like this was routine. When the judge asked if both parties understood the petition for annulment, Fiona stood and answered for Nathan. She said he had sufficient grounds due to deception and breach of marital trust. My throat tightened. The judge turned to me and asked if I had anything to say. I thought about all the excuses I'd made, all the things I could claim. Loneliness, neglect, a mistake. But every word sounded hollow in my head. All I said was, I didn't mean for it to end like this. The judge nodded without expression and stamped the papers. Just like that, it was over. No drama, no shouting, just a faint thud of finality that echoed in my chest. Fiona gathered her files and said quietly, Mr. Vale wanted this resolved peacefully. He won't be contacting you again. Then she walked out, heels clicking against the tile. I sat there for a long time, staring at the signature on the decree, Nathan's name, neat and unshaking. Outside, the afternoon sun was blinding. I half expected to see him waiting by the steps, but the street was empty. I took off my ring and placed it on the railing. It rolled once, caught the light, and fell between the cracks. I didn't reach for it. The wind off the street was warm and careless, carrying everything away. The marriage hadn't even lasted the honeymoon. Now it didn't exist at all. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.